Hello, everyone. That song was nice, wasn't it? Hello, Kodo. Nice to see you. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope you are doing okay. Thank you for joining. My name is Michael. My pronouns are he, they. I am the founder of We Create Space, and for those who aren't familiar with us, we are a collective, a global collective of LGBTQ plus change makers, empowering our communities and allies with tools, with knowledge, and with a support network for self-care, for personal growth, and queer leadership. And as a non-profit social enterprise, we're really on a mission to drive positive change for LGBTQ plus people across global industries, cultures, and societies. And we do this by connecting our communities with through these kind of solutions and services. So through workshops, through live conversations, shared experiences, also through content and also consultancy. Um, we also have a couple of events taking place this summer. For the first time, we've designed two events under the kind of Pride and Beyond umbrella, and the first is a summit taking place on May 13th, and it's a one-day virtual summit to bring together LGBTQ plus leaders, really to prepare them for Pride season and the month ahead. Um, the workshops include kind of looking at storytelling, looking at how we can build queer resilience, and also kind of how we can build boundaries as well as we start engaging with our communities throughout this really busy season. And then to kind of wrap things up, we've got a retreat as well at the start of July, which is 2 nights in Norfolk for those based in the UK. And really, it's a chance for, again, queer leaders just to come together and reset and regroup. It requires a lot of energy to be a visible queer leader, especially during Pride season. So if you are interested in either of those, please do reach out for more information. And so today's event, thank you for joining. We are kind of going to be joined, or we are joined by kind of four inspiring queer leaders who are going to be speaking actually on the topic of being a queer leader of faith. And this is part of our monthly webinar series, Queer Perspectives. And each of our speakers are going to be sharing their stories, their perspectives, and their unique lived experiences as well, through the lens of their different LGBTQ plus identities. So we hope, yeah, you're not going to leave empty-handed. You're going to have some insights, some knowledge, and some hopefully kind of practical tools as well, potentially to go into your organizations and create more inclusive environments. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to pass over to our wonderful host, Candice.
Hi everyone, hope you're well and hope your week has been great so far. I'm so lucky to be chairing this a beautiful event with people in lovely muscles and great shiny jacket there as well. So my name is Candice. My pronouns are she, her. I am ADHD, beautifully dyslexic as well. So if any point today I stumble on some words, bear with me. I'm located in sunny Margate. Well, actually, the whole UK is sunny today. So we're lucky to share that with all of you. And in most of my day, I do racial discrimination training. I am also a tech nerd and a dance teacher. So that's how I like to let it loose. So I get to introduce all of these lovely people next. So let's start with Andrew.
Hi Candice. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew, he, him. and I'm a playwright, drama practitioner, and informal educator. And in reality, that means that I've been a youth worker for 20 years. And I first began being a youth worker in schools the year that Section 28 was repealed, which prevented the promotion of homosexuality in the UK. And during that first year, civil partnerships became legal as well. And the other thing I had to do in that time was completely rewrite sexual health education for the faith schools. So that was my beginning 20 years ago as a queer leader of faith, thrown in at the deep end, and yet having the opportunity to immediately start to frame a new narrative for queer students, queer relationships, in a sense of reality that it's always been, but reality in a legislative reality as well.
That. All right, next is beautiful Koro.
Hello, my name is Koro Nishimura. I am a makeup artist. This is me. This is me at Miss Universe doing makeup. And I'm also a Buddhist monk. This is me in the middle. I'm currently in London because I recently published a book called This Monk Wears Heels, and I was introduced to Michael, and that's how I got to meet everybody. I use beauty and Buddhism to empower people that we should not feel inferior, because according to Buddhism, they appreciate everybody, and regardless of any differences, we are all valuable and equal. So that's what I'm telling everybody, and that's me. Thank you. And he or him will be great.
All right, and last but not least, Alex.
I don't know, after hearing the three of you, I think I might be least, but I'll give it a go. My name is Alex Dessar. My pronouns are she, her. I am a lesbian woman of color, British Indian, or Indian British. I'm still deciding kind of which language I want to use at the moment. And I am, for the purposes of this panel, I will introduce myself also as a Roman Catholic, having struggled with my faith probably since early teens. So I'm really excited to delve into this topic on the panel. In terms of what I do day to day, I am an actress, so there's a lot of performers and a lot of people in the entertainment arts industry on this call, so I'm excited to see how that factors into our conversation. I'm an actress. I am also co-founder of a company called House of Pride, which is a space for queer, female and non-binary people to grow personally, professionally and creatively. And our goal is to build physical spaces around the world where people can do that. And we're delighted to be working with We Create Space on a lot of these panels, and just hearing about the great work and promoting the great work that We Create Space is doing. And I also work for a tech company. So I'm head of programs at a tech company called Workin, which essentially is all for career acceleration, specifically for underrepresented groups. So we develop mentoring and sponsorship programs, learning and development programs for primarily underrepresented groups in industries and organizations. So that's me.
And Sis said she felt like she'd be the least. I don't know. It's all subjective, isn't it? We're all educators in some shape or form. So let's get this magic train on the go. The first question, we're thinking about our faith and mostly religion. We often think about being born into it. So this question is thinking about your journey. How have you come to believe or understand your faith? Anyone can go first.
May I start?
Yeah, sure.
So I was born in a temple. How more religious can you be, kind of, right? But I really wanted to be a princess as a child, but people expected me to shave my head, and they would be like, oh, are you already practicing chanting? And that was a really stressful expectation that I suffered. And because I wanted to be, I was really rebellious. I went to the US at the age of 18, and I stayed in the US for, well, 11 years. But later I came back to Japan, and I became a Buddhist monk. When I was young, I thought that Buddhism doesn't support LGBTQ people. It's really binary. And I thought that they would say no to shiny things. But what I found out during the Buddhist training is that it actually supports LGBTQ people. And they said, well, my master told me that as long as you're able to teach other people that we can be all liberated regardless of any differences. I felt that I had a prejudice, even though I was born in a temple. I didn't know. I needed to study myself in order to understand. So that's the drama in short, but now I embrace my religious identity.
Mm. You've got things sparking in my brain. So Andrew or Alex, how do you think about your faith, or how has it like broadened your thinking about faith?
Alexi, you're gonna shall
That's
I?
amazing. That's I can go. I can go. I
Go
just
for it.
off of what Koro was saying, this idea of not knowing how, when you are, I was born into a religious family as well. So my family are all Catholics, and it's this idea, I think I've heard from a lot of religious, not just people of faith, but religious LGBT people, that there is this sort of journey of discovery with how those two aspects of their identity interact with each other, how they complement each other or don't. And so for a lot of people that I know, myself included, it was a case of, because you're sort of oftentimes born into a religious family, it's a case of denying that religion or moving away from that religion to explore your sexuality, and then maybe finding then the ways that they complement each other and they can exist together. And I know it's not the story for everyone, and I'm sure I think we're going on to Andrew, who might not have that experience, but for me that was very much the case. And so it was a case of, actually, when I realized, when I put a word to lesbian being the word to my sexuality, it was a case of that immediately being imbued with this sort of shame, because that's what I was taught from the Catholic Church. Not from my family. I don't think my family ever had anything to say about that, but from the church itself. And it was so much so, one of the first people I came out to was a priest. So I told one of my friends, and he was also Catholic, and I said, I really want to go to confession, because I just need to understand this. I need to know that the church is okay with this, that my and by extension my family are going to be okay with this. So I said, I can't go to my priest because my priest might tell my family and it just might get out, so I don't want to do that. So can you set up a meeting with what happens in your church? Can I go and see your priest? So she very kindly contacted her priest, and it wasn't like when you go into a church and go into the confessional, it was actually at his house, and I had never experienced this before. So what I did, just in case he recognized me when he was out in town, like when I was out with my family, I was like 13 years old, and I put on the most makeup you've ever seen in your life. I put like bright pink lipstick on, I had my hair up, which I still never do. I had the shortest skirt on and high heels, and I like didn't own these clothes. I had to go and buy them just so he wouldn't recognize me in the street like a week later or something, if I was out there with my family. So I got dressed up and I went to see him, and he saw right through that immediately, right? He was like, now, I'm not sure if this is how you usually present yourself, but I just want you to know that you can like be very honest in this space. And so I eventually got out the words. I said, look, I'm gay, and I don't know what the church really thinks about that. I know what the Pope says about it. And I know that there are some people who interpret the Bible in a certain way. I just don't really know what as an institution, as a religion, or what God thinks. And then he said, my child, go home and read Luke chapter 15. I was like, cool. Anything else? And he was like, just go home, and if everything's all right, just go home and read Luke chapter 15. So I was like, okay, cool, thanks. And so I left and I went home and opened my Bible, and I opened it up to Luke chapter 15, and it was about a shepherd going to search for his one lost sheep in a flock of, I don't know, it was 100 or something, and this one lost sheep, he went to go and search for it. And a lot of people were saying, why are you going looking for this one sheep when you've got 99 here? Just look after them. And then the sheep eventually returned home. And that's what the passage said. And I was like, I don't know what this means. Are you telling me that, like, I can, if I return home, everything is fine? Like, I'm really confused as to what you're saying, because I'm not saying that I want to stop being gay and come back. Like, at this point, I hadn't moved away from my religion, and I wasn't looking to come back. What I was looking to see was whether I needed to leave in the first place. And that kind of, at that point, I was like, okay, well, maybe I do need to leave if you don't really understand what I'm trying to say, or how I'm trying to meld these two identities. So that was the beginning of my journey and trying to explore the two. But I've talked enough, and I'm going to hand on to Andrew.
Well, I think that's a great segue, if I'm honest, because I don't think I said at the beginning, but I was brought up Catholic Christian, but that's not the full story. My dad's side of the family are not Catholic. My dad did convert when he married my mum, not because he had to, but he felt he wanted to. When me, my brother, and my sister were growing up, he wanted us all to be sharing in faith together. But I'd say that's not also the full picture as well, because I'm from a place called Pendle in Lancashire, and there's quite a lot of spiritual traditions there. So, for example, the Quaker movement began really by experiences in Pendle. And I would say when it comes to faith and my Christianity, I would say it's experienced through mysticism. Not through choice, but through experience. It's through a mystical realization. And the Quaker movement, when it began, the mystical revelation was that actually the divine light is within all of us, that we all have the divine light within. And some of the other churches, such as the Catholic Church, took decades, if not longer, to come to this realization that actually the light is within. And so a lot of my journey, when I came to realize I was gay when I was probably 12, 13, I started to, and this is ongoing, this hasn't ended, this exploration, but I understand that I'm a spiritual being in a physical body. And I understand and interpret the world as a spiritual world in physical form. And so what's been really key for me and key for me on my faith journey is to reconcile and to understand and reshape the physical with the spiritual. So religion is the physical and faith is the spiritual. That's kind of how I've really started to make sense of it. And I had to do this. Again, I don't think this was really choice. I had to do this because the more I became aware of my sexuality, the more it started to develop my faith and my relationship with God. And the more I looked into my faith deep within my heart, the more I started to understand why I'm gay and, you know, why I'm part of this queer community. And I couldn't really separate the two. And I've had a good go at it. I've really had a good go at it. And I know religion and individuals do as well, have a really good go at separating the two. But fundamentally, what I've come to realize is I'm not creating my wholeness because my wholeness is already fully created. And if it's fully created, my kind of purpose is to step into the light and reveal my wholeness. And I can't do that half-heartedly. And I can't do that without my sexual identity and my sexuality. And I can't do it without my faith. So I can't keep on hiding as well. So I'm here today, and this is part of me stepping out as well and making those steps forward to not be hiding and to say, no, I'm going to step into the light with all my wholeness, because that's what's been created for me and with me and in me and of God as well. And who am I to argue? Who am I to resist that? Because I've tried resisting, and many queer people try to resist. And I really like what Koro said as well about liberation, the sense of liberation. I'm a firm believer that the only reason people oppress is because there is something real there and present that exists to oppress. The only reason things have been legislated for, and people have been legislated against, and love has been legislated against, is because it exists and it is real. And therefore, if it exists and it is real, there is a journey of liberation and fullness and wholeness within that. And when I said about going into schools after Section 28 was repealed and same-sex partnerships were made legal, that is an example of saying this is reality. We are reality. We exist. And not only do we exist, but we are whole. And therefore, we will step out and present ourselves complete in our wholeness, complete in our wholeness. And that is how I've been able to reconcile the physical and the spiritual together.
You all answered so beautifully. I think, Andrew, you've really consolidated some of the thoughts that came into my head from hearing all of you talk about your experiences of faith, thinking about faith. Actually does draw on my next question, which is about how you've combated or dealt with challenges. So I'm just going to hop over that one and squidge it into another question, which is, what do you say to those who don't think there is space for LGBTQI plus people in faith groups? And just because you so eloquently finished the last question, Andrew, I'm actually going to go in opposite direction, starting with you, because you actually have just kind of tangled and tinkled the question there a little bit. So I'll let you start.
Okay. A space for LGBTQ within faith communities. I think, firstly, I would say that the God which is often presented is not necessarily a God that exists. And therefore, for LGBTQ people, there is an opportunity for us to actually really explore and reveal who God truly is. Non-gendered, exists and belongs to everybody, manifests to everybody, through everybody, and with everybody. That is fundamentally faith, fundamentally a faith journey. And what religion is there to do is to be a vessel, an open, empty vessel to enable, and a space to enable that reality of the divine to be fully and truly visual and experienced. And so ironically, the space that we're talking about is actually better represented with the presence of LGBTQ people within religion and faith than not having us there, because we ourselves, through our lived experience, have a deep and intimate relationship with the divine and with the creator. And that in itself is the space which religion and faith, different faiths, are there to create and to facilitate. And, you know, so we're not there to step into what is already or already exists. Actually, we are part of reshaping the space, reshaping it and reimagining it, not just for ourselves, but for others who are not fully represented in the physical ordered society, but are fully represented and visible to the creator. And so from my point of view and how I approach it on a real day-to-day level within my church community is just literally to say, you know, my lived experience is real, and I have something to give and something to share, and it is of the divine. And that's how I've approached it, really, to go into that space and then to reshape that space. I think change comes from within, and then once change comes from within, and Michael said about being a change maker, then it is about change coming from without and by and with other people as well. So it's stepping in, but also stepping in and changing space.
Love that. Alex?
I completely agree with Andrew. And something you said, Andrew, when you talked about changing us being freer, LGBTQ people being freer to determine their own relationship with religion and with faith, actually really resonated with me. Something that we hear a lot in Catholicism, I'm sure in other religions and denominations, is the phrase God is love. And it's, for me, this idea, being LGBTQ plus and being religious or a faith is all about the expression of love, whether it's love for ourselves, love for other people, love for God, love for people around us or the environment. And what's really interesting to me in this expression is, say, let's take something like marriage or a heterosexual relationship. That's sort of passed down through tradition, this sort of idea of traditional marriage. And there are lots of people who feel like, you know, that's their path. They meet someone, they get married, have children. And lots of people I know, lots of my straight friends, continue down that path, not really truly examining whether that they have a choice. But I'm not saying it's the same for everyone, but I think being LGBTQ plus, you kind of go, do I want to get married? Because it's an institution that has prevented me from expressing my love that way for so long. Do I actually want to get married? Do I want to be in do I want to be in a monogamous relationship? Do I want to be with this kind of person or this kind of person? And it just opens up that kind of freedom. And I think it's the same when we're talking about religion and faith as well. It's saying, okay, there is nothing expected of me here, because actually I'm able to step out of this traditional path in religion and faith. So what's my own relationship with it? And that's why I think that when LGBTQ plus people who are also religious or people of faith actually are able to bring the two together and be in the fullness of that relationship together, it's so incredibly meaningful because they've chosen to do that in an institution and in an environment that hasn't necessarily allowed them to do that in the easiest way possible. So that's why I think that, of course, there's space because you've chosen to be a part of it.
Koro. That's to think about. Your thoughts?
What I thought is that religion being kind of forced because of where you're born and almost giving one option of a religion to choose from, I think it's really limiting. And it's really unfortunate that we kind of tend to think that that's the only way. How do I move within this realm of what I was being told or what's being welcomed. And I would really want to introduce Buddhism in a way, because I feel that just because I'm Japanese, it doesn't mean that I have to live in Japan. Just because I'm Japanese, I have to die in Japan. I feel that we are free to choose and seek other options too. Here, I'm not trying to convert anybody, but I just want to show that there are different ways. I think comparative religion is something that we should look into, especially if it's suffer.
Yeah.
But what I heard so far is really relevant to Buddhism. There are teachings within Buddhism that doesn't allow women to join the Sangha, which is like the Buddhist community. There are teachings that doesn't allow castrated men to join the Buddhist groups. So that we have to understand that these stories and these teachings are not always perfect. And but at the same time, there are some teachings. This is my favorite one. In the Pure Land, it's like heaven that we go to. There are different colors of flowers blossoming. Blue lotus flower shines in blue, yet yellow lotus flower shines in yellow, red lotus flower shines in red, white lotus flower shines in white. And my teacher was telling me that Buddhism really finds beauty in diversity. So that was like a validation that I received from the master. So I think just like Alex was talking about the sheep, like does it mean that I have to go back to the group and kind of convert myself into the norm that's expected on me? Or does it mean that even though I feel lost, I can be welcomed? Like, there are so many stories that's ambiguous. So we have to really make sure that religion, well, in my opinion, Buddhism is something a person made. And it's almost like reading a lot of stories. You look into movies like Mulan, she goes to the war, but it doesn't mean the religion is telling you to go to the war. It's more about listening to your heart, fighting for somebody you love. So we can interpret these stories in many, many different ways. And I think it's really sad when these values sometimes misinterpreted or forced upon, and that misinterpretation is like everything, like the rule that we have to follow. So I think yeah, like Andrew said, being religious and being faithful are totally different things. You can be faithful or spiritual without believing in a religion. And I think we have to be, well, this is how I take, not for everybody maybe, but to me, Buddhism is like a book that I take out from a shelf and refer to it for wisdom or help when I need to, and I can put it back. And it's not the world that I live in. So I think just as much as previous religious leaders were important and valuable and knowledgeable, I feel that we are also knowledgeable. We have the internet, we can learn about other religions, and we are also wise. So I have kind of decided not to be like the follower of the leader, but I also am a leader too. And I would like to really give different options and space for people to breathe. So yeah, I feel that we can read in many different ways, and it's up to us to live, to choose freedom or not.
I love that. When you guys were telling your stories, I actually remember the story of my own. So I'm going quick caveat, quick. It leads into my question, so don't worry. Is that actually that Luke Bible passage I actually used to confirm that my friend was being a bigot. So I grew up in a multi-faith household. My mom is Christian, my dad is Muslim, and my uncle is Rastafarian. So I knew about like Judaism from quite a young age, Rasta history. And I had a lot of Christian friends at school. And the girl was saying why she felt uncomfortable around LGBTQIA plus people. And I just was like, but there's this story in the Bible, if I'm paraphrasing, let me know. But like this guy goes after his sheep, and it means that that sheep mattered. So if that sheep was gay, was it stupid for him to run after his sheep? And she was just sat there baffled, like, how could I use this to say that everyone matters? And I was like, well, he did look for that sheep for a long time, so everyone matters. So now looking at our intersections of people who might identify in different ways, how does your intersection pose a question on your leadership, and how like faith intersects your leadership in your community's workspaces, or how you do your art? So I'm going to go to Kodo first.
Yes. Could you repeat the question?
So how does your intersections like intersect into the leadership that you provide to society, or even your faith?
Leadership. Well, because I'm a Buddhist monk, I think I'm in charge of studying about religions, and to find some encouraging and validating teachings and really share it to the world, just like I talked about the lotus metaphor. And because I'm one of the first out and proud homosexual Buddhist monk, I created a space for myself. Being on the media, showing myself to the people, to the world, I think people can be encouraged. So for me, having courage, having conviction in my sexuality is a type of leadership that I am proud of.
Love that. And we'll go to Andrew also. How does your intersections intersect into the work and leadership you do?
Well, I work within quite a number of spaces, and always have done. And some of those have been faith spaces of all different denominations and faiths. And some of them have been no faith at all. And so the dialogue that needs to take place in my circumstances sort of pivots depending on which space I'm in. Faith spaces, the reality of being in faith spaces, for example, is there's a lot of progress needed. There's huge amounts needed. And, that sense of what it means to speak up and speak out, and do so regularly and consistently, and not kind of take people out of a comfort zone, which does exist. So I find myself having to do that quite a lot. I've intentionally stepped away from kind of working for church structures, i.e. on the payroll, either freelance or employed, because that then allows me to still be in the conversation and part of the dialogue, but it frees me up so much more to really have the conversations that are needed. I would say on the flip side, in a secular perspective, when it comes to intersectionality, and definitely around faith and queer identity, is again, there's not tons of understanding, and yet there are queer young people, LGBTQ young people who are of faith, either culturally, religiously, or spiritually, or all three. And therefore, whilst they're in a secular space and they are effectively coming out, the need to have dialogue around faith is essential, because that impacts their relationship with their family and their wider community. So I find this kind of balance between faith and sexuality plays its part really in everything that I'm doing at the moment, and especially with young people, whether that's in a faith setting or in a secular setting. Yeah.
That won't be the first or the last time. Let's hope that's my magic number one and the last time. Anyway, Alex, and what are your thoughts?
I'm going to answer this question a little bit differently and just firstly touch on intersectionality and my faith. So look at my multiple identities, because I am a second generation immigrant. And a lot of people might look at me and think that I am, when I was on this panel, because it wasn't stated what our religions or our faith beliefs were, that I was Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, etc. And I'm Catholic, and then most people think, oh, that's either a conversion or, you know, you're from a mixed race family and part of your family is white. And for a long time, that really that impacted my faith, my identity growing up, because I mean, my family have been Catholic since I think around the 16th century, when Portugal invaded the tiny part of India that my family were from. And it means that when I grew up in the UK, when I grew up in England, the places, the communities that I was a part of outside of my family were mainly white spaces, because churches were mainly white spaces. And so I had this kind of, being Catholic, I kind of had this proximity to whiteness. And also my lesbian identity, as I got older, there was also a kind of proximity to whiteness, because that was seen as a Western kind of concept. So it really, both of those factors actually had a real impact on the way that I did not see my race and my ethnicity, my cultural heritage. So really that is, I'm only starting to come into my own and to fully acknowledge what being a woman of color and being in Indian descent means to me and has impacted me along the way, because actually my religion and my sexuality really were the two looming identities in my life growing up. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second, and how it's also been quite hard for me as as someone whose family, you know, got their faith through colonialism, imperialism, to really reconcile that and embody that as part of my identity, when logically I'm like, oh no, I shouldn't, I should eschew this part of me. I shouldn't really, I shouldn't believe that, because inherently that's not where I'm from. This was something imposed on me, and I need to kind of reject it on behalf of my ancestors. And it's really hard to sort of come to terms with the fact that, no, okay, I did actually grow up with this. My family now believe this, and I am part of my family, and this is integral to my identity. So that's the first bit I wanted to tackle with intersectionality. And then the second part, you mentioned the word leadership. And for me, being a leader, in being a business leader, so being a co-founder and CEO, also being a leader in the tech space, and you know, I don't love the title lead. I don't necessarily resonate with it very much, but the part that I do resonate with is leaders supporting other people. That's what I think a leader is, actually, rather than necessarily seeing myself as a role model. It's about bringing other people with you and supporting someone or a group of people. And so that's where that's my access point for being a leader of faith, is how can I talk to other people who might be going through a similar journey to mine, or how can I support people who don't think there is a space to be LGBT and religious, to help them to be so. So whilst I don't actually see myself as a leader, I think that that word support and love is the core tenets of what a leader is. So I guess we all are in some respect.
I like the way you answered that. Oh, Koro, go.
Yeah, isn't it so unfair that depending on where we are born and who we grow up with, religion can be a help or like suffocation? I feel that as a religious leader myself also, it's really sad when they force you to believe and they bash you for not believing or being faithful enough. I think being faithful or being religious is something that has to be spontaneous if it's possible, because I know some areas or countries or religion, they force you, otherwise they, violate, use force or violence to make you believe. That's like the saddest thing that I think happens, because religion was made to help people and not to be manipulated to govern or control people. And that's something that we need to be really aware of. And I feel that now we live in a time where we are awake and we know that we can work for ourselves, we can make our dreams come true, and not just be the the chess pieces of the country, all the men, you have to go to the war, or the woman, that's how religion was used. And taking away the information, not telling us what religion really says, just this manipulation really is something that I really hate. So as a religious leader, I think we need to be educating in a way that this is how the story goes, and it's up to you to interpret and take in. If you learn something, then it's great. I also think religious leader as a person who holds a torch and protect the light. When a person wants to believe in something, somebody needs to protect the light. And I feel that the person with a torch should not burn other people with a torch or threaten, but be like a tempest or beacon of hope for people to keep believing who they are. So yeah, it's just, that's kind of why I became a Buddhist monk, because I feel that religion is really misused, and I really want to make people be aware and rethink what is religion really, because it's there to really not to limit us, but to help us go out of limits.
I love all the questions coming in via the Q&A box, and I love everything that all of you have said. I've got one question for Alex. What would you advise a queer person who has walked away from their faith due to non-acceptance from their previous church family?
I would, as someone who has done that, not because of any outward discrimination, actually from the church. When I came out, I was just like, no, I know what they're going to say. I'm gonna walk away anyway, without actually even talking to them properly. So that was the first thing I would do, is actually sit down and talk to people, if you feel safe to, rather than assuming you know what they're going to say. But the second part of that is, I think the key word in that question is actually family. And that's how I associate and identify with my religion, is it's because of my family. If my family weren't religious, I probably wouldn't be religious too. And I experience my love in faith and religion and my love of God through my love of my family. And it's community based. And that's why I'm still religious, is because I still have that sense of community with them. It's a way to connect with them that I wouldn't have otherwise, because I don't necessarily speak the first language of my grandparents. I'm not there with them all the time, but one thing we can do is go to church together, or one thing I can do is ring them after church and talk about it. And that's a way that we connect. So the key word in there being family. And I think the more people that you do talk to, the more we go through this world and are open about who we are and are sure about who we are, with our own learning and our own reading, the more you will find community and family that you connect with, the more you will find other queer people of faith, queer people who are the same religion as you. And the more you'll feel that sense of community and family. But that won't happen if you don't talk about it. That won't happen if you aren't open to receiving it either. So as soon as you're comfortable doing that, I think that will come to you. That's my advice. I don't know if anyone has any other.
I am going to take another question from the Q&A and go to Kojo about it. So have any of your lived experiences or life stories ever helped you with this question? So as a faith leader, are you able to work with other leaders to look at how your sexual orientation or how you identify across LGBTQIA plus to continue educating others and talking about your faith?
When you said other leaders, do you mean other leaders?
So working with like maybe other people who practice your faith, or maybe someone else who sees themselves as a leader but shares the same faith as you or a different faith. How have you seen any of your lived experiences or stories that could advise someone to continue seeking leadership or change?
I think there are so many potential in me. In terms of my own school, I talked about my sexuality. Because Buddhism doesn't discriminate, why don't we make it into an inclusive environment? So I designed the rainbow sticker with the Japan Buddhist Federation, and they funded me to print this, and I sent it to more than 50 countries, friends in more than 50 countries. So that was really nice that they also stood up with me, and now they are doing a lot of LGBTQ panel discussions, and they write about inclusivity in our newsletters. And also, because I'm a religious leader, I feel that I can talk about inclusivity with other religious leaders, especially because I feel that religion is also a source of income for the religious leaders. And there are so many things that only religious leaders can talk together, because we don't want to reveal the secrets. We don't want to say that from this person you earned specific money, or this person came to the funeral, but this happened. So there are so many things. It's almost like being a singer. You don't want to reveal, like if you are Mariah Carey, you don't want to reveal you wearing pajamas and talk about how much money you earn from this CD or this album. But if I'm Mariah Carey, and if I'm talking to Madonna or Dua Lipa, there are things that we can talk about easier because they are going through the similar situation. So what I try to do is to encourage other religious leaders that they can be a hope to help more people, because religion is really tied to money. I really want to make the religion more vibrant and more modern by growing with the people, taking in what the societies need, experiencing, and also giving what is needed. In my case, it's teaching of equality. And when I talk about LGBTQ community, especially to the Japanese school leaders, I say you can give hope to people who are struggling because you believe in Buddhism. And I think this is what I want to do with other leaders in different religions, that you can be a hope, because now the world has kind of realized that diversity is more beautiful than limiting people. So using encouraging them to be like the saviors, that's how I can make them happy to help people. So that's my strategy. I disclose so much, but you want the truth, right?
Okay, I'm like looking at the time. I'm trying to get everything in. So I'm going to use the last question with Andrew. So how can we work with organizations to help those who are employed feel like their faith belongs and is accepted in the space that they work or are doing their craft? You're on mute.
There we are. That's better. So the question being, within a workplace environment, is that what we're talking about? Yeah. I would say straight away what's just popped into my head is what I was talking about wholeness and understanding self and true self, and how that kind of gets threaded through everything within our lives. So I talk about, when I'm having conversations, that we have different sanctuaries within our lives. And if we have like 4 different sanctuaries, it might be our home, work can be a sanctuary, family can be a sanctuary, not always. And so you have these different sanctuaries, and you need to really develop and nurture those as much as possible. And I think really with work, when you go to work, invariably you've gone and you've kind of switched off who you are. You put on a different costume. You know, from a drama point of view, you've got the front stage and the backstage. So it's like you go out through the curtain and you do your performance, and then afterwards you come back and go backstage, you kick off your heels, you sit back, and then you try to actually figure out who the heck you are, because you have to reconnect with yourself. So I think there's definitely a need, and it's not just by us, but it's by employers, to really start to grapple with the idea that a workspace environment is not simply that front stage, but is also the backstage. And I think the last few years with the pandemic has shone a light on that, where we are in our backstage environments, our backstage spaces, yet we are presenting and performing and, you know, fulfilling our work obligations, which are generally front stage. So I don't think we've got to we haven't achieved it or got to where we need to get, but I think we've by default made some progress, really trying to address this, and that it's kind of like blown open for all of us, is to say, actually, we now need to embrace each other in a sense of wholeness. We need to embrace every element of each other and begin to open dialogue, not because for the end results, but for the starting conversation. And I think really that's where we're at the moment. And it would be great to see where that takes us in the next few years.
You all had such beautiful answers. I'm going to hand back to Michael.
Thank you so much. I was giving you the eyes. I know you couldn't see me, but you felt it, I'm sure. Thank you so much, Kodo, Alex, Andrew, and Kanndiss as well. Thank you. You're all brilliant. For those who are in London and would like to hear more stories and wisdom from Kodo, we're actually hosting an in-person live talk at Lock Hotel in Bermondsey on Tuesday, the 29th of March. It's going to be in conversation with Tash Thomas about Kodo's new book, This Monk Wears Heels. So please join us. We've also got Queer Leadership 101 returning. That's our webinar series supporting LGBTQ plus individuals with becoming more impactful leaders. That's back on the 5th of April. And we're going to be looking at how to recruit and nurture young LGBTQ plus talent and future queer leaders, and also queer perspectives. So this series is back on the 21st of April with 4 more queer leaders discussing surviving conversion therapy. So thank you so much for joining us. If you do have any other questions, do reach out. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.